Good evening, ladies and gentlemen who are watching us live here at Drake at Access Television. I'm your host, Joseph Bigos.
And I'm Richard Silvio.
Tonight's the night we've been waiting for, Richard. It's our 10th episode, Extravaganza.
Absolutely. We are live here at DATV, and we are live on Facebook, so make sure you go comment over there.
And Richard's got the comment section, and hopefully it gets fiery, and we get some people with some crazy comments.
Absolutely. And in about 30 minutes, you're going to be able to call in, talk to us, and have a good time.
We don't want to waste any time, so let's
we do not.
stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Absolutely.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Never gets old, Joey.
Never. So, book review, I felt it was necessary to bring the book that got me started on my love for history and my love for the American presidents. Don't know much about history by the great Kenneth C. Davis. He has other great books that don't know much about history in general, don't know much about the American presidents. This is a great book. It's a very bipartisan book. It really, comes and looks at the presidents at very different perspectives. There's only one president. His name's Woodrow Wilson, which you and I will get into at some point, Richard.
That's going to be a fun conversation.
But other than that, let's start with the father of our country,
Mr.
George Washington. Did I forget something?
Yeah, we have to explain how the system's going to work, Joey.
Okay, let's explain
So this episode, I don't even think we said what we're doing. We are going to be ranking the 45 U.S. presidents, not including Biden, because he's too new and we want to give him a chance to prove himself. Wrong or right, we'll see.
Yes.
So the ranking system we are going to be using for the presidents, the top category is, we call it S for superior, only 2 presidents in that. And then other than that, it follows the normal grade school ranking of A through F. So first president, George Washington.
So, he's the father of our country, right?
Absolutely.
When I look at George Washington, I look at a president who helped lay down the foundation of the country, right? His moral authority, economic management, at the context of the times, the fact that he staunchly abided by the laws of the Constitution, successfully thwarted the Whiskey Rebellion, and led the country in its infancy, shows a lot about a great man who was our very first president.
It absolutely does, Joey, and not to mention all the precedents that he set for, future presidents and future people running the country.
He developed the cabinet system.
Absolutely, it was something, what I think is the most important thing that Washington set forth for the rest of the presidents is serving 2 terms, They offered to make this person the king of America, but did he do that? No, he quit after 2 terms and said, this isn't right. We need multiple people, having chances to become president. So that was a wonderful thing that he did.
And a lot of people don't seem to think he was maybe the best political person. But I'll tell you what, that doesn't matter because some of the most political people were the worst presidents.
Absolutely. The point of the matter is that he created our country. He brought us up. He was a great general, great tactics, and he saved us from the British oppression.
Absolutely. And he ultimately helped us avoid many wars, too.
Absolutely.
That being said, father of our country, ranked superior.
Absolutely.
Now we move into the sage of Monticello, that is Thomas Jefferson.
Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Jefferson, we gave an A-. Joey, would you like to start us off?
So the thing about him is a lot of I'd say the first 7 presidents, you can't really, besides John Quincy Adams, you can't really give them below a B- ranking because they all had an important impact on helping to lay down the foundation of the country. And with Thomas Jefferson, at times he was hypocritical when it came to the slavery problem, right? Because a lot of people seem to think he was for it, but he was against it. And I'll tell you why, because he started that, ultimately helped, he banned the importation of slaves, hindering the international trade slave system, which helped us lead to the eventual dissolve of slavery as a whole. And I think that was vital to the country.
Absolutely, Joey. And I'm glad that you mentioned his foreign policy when it comes to slavery, because he was big. I believe he was an isolationist, you could say. Joey, do you know?
Yes, he was an isolationist.
He famously kept us out of the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, he wanted to keep us out of many wars.
Absolutely, and in fact, he is the one who made the Louisiana Purchase. And for those of you who don't know what that is, he basically purchased Louisiana and further west. And he's also the person who funded the Lewis and Clark expedition. So you know what? He spread himself across so many different categories and subjects. There's something for everyone to love about it.
Absolutely, and quite frankly, about the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
So before that actually took place, he helped drastically reduce the national debt. But the funny thing is, America grew by more than probably millions of square miles with that purchase. But the interesting is the national debt was still lower even after the Louisiana
Really?
Purchase. Yeah.
Wow.
And he actually repealed the Alien and Sedation Acts that were put forth by his predecessor, John Adams, which really targeted at an unconstitutional
Right.
violation of free speech.
Speaking of the Constitution and Jefferson, I'm glad you brought that up because, we're over here talking so great about him. You may want to know, what did he not do right? He was, like you said, with the Constitution, especially with the Louisiana Purchase, he wasn't technically allowed by the Constitution to do that, so he did step out of his boundaries now and then.
He seemed pretty hypocritical and pragmatic at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And famously, he was involved with the Aaron Burr case, which was
Yes.
one of his enemies, who he basically decided that he was guilty before the man even had a trial.
Absolutely.
So, everyone has their faults, but overall, he really was a great president.
Yes, absolutely. So now we're going to move into Old Hickory. That is our 7th president,
Andrew
Jackson. You want to start us off with President Jackson?
Jackson, I think, may be the first controversial figure that we're discussing tonight. A lot of people love him. A lot of people hate him. A lot of people don't know who he is. He famously invaded, I believe, Florida, which was under control by the Spanish at the time, took over a few cities. This was when he was a general, by the way, not president. But some people think he's a hero for doing that. Some people think that, he's an A-class a-hole for doing that. But you know what? I think overall he was a pretty great guy, He was able to control the nullification crisis.
Absolutely. That was a big crisis going on at the times.
Absolutely. Southern states were getting to the point where they didn't want to follow federal laws, and obviously we know they can't do that. And he's the one who whipped them into shape, opposed to
Absolutely.
starting a civil war.
And I love that you brought up following federal laws, because Andrew Jackson is actually the president that started putting checks and balances into place to reduce corruption from prior administrations. I mean, he put executive, investigations in all cabinets, in offices. He helped reduce fraudulent claims for pensions. He helped prevent evasion of custom duties. He put in vast measures because and you know what it is? I feel like that tells a lot about his character.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He really wanted to make sure the American people knew that he was going to be honest with them. And
He was a go-getter. He really
Absolutely.
was, And I'm glad that you brought up the differences between him and previous, administrations, because unlike Thomas Jefferson, Jackson wasn't really an isolationist. In fact, did you know that he was the first president to create treaties with governments in Asia?
Yes.
He really
Interesting.
broke ground, for future American expansionism. So, you know what? He's a pretty okay dude in my book.
Yes, and trade was substantially increased.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you saw a vast increase in American exports and imports during his presidency. But there is also the things that I'm not so a fan for when it comes to Andrew Jackson. There is the Indian Removal Act.
Yep.
I think this was quite genocidal. His policies towards Native Americans were extremely genocidal and harsh. It is said that he could have saved thousands of Cherokee lives if it wasn't for his policies. And his successor, Martin Van Buren, who was not a very successful president either, the reason why for that was because he continued lots of the policies that were negative of Jackson.
And we'll get into him later.
And the other thing about Jackson was the veto for he vetoed the charter for the Second Bank of the United States. This just sent banks lending money for not without much due diligence, and it just led to vast inflation. And it was just an irresponsible and, I think, very impulsive decision by him. He would have been quite better off reforming the bank. Second
Absolutely.
Bank.
And Joey, I'm glad you mentioned the Indian Removal Act, because when it comes to things like slavery, and Native American issues and whatnot, that's going to be a really sensitive thing to talk about. And, obviously, slavery is like the worst thing that humans can ever do to each other.
Absolutely.
The things that we did to Native Americans, atrocious. Not much better than what Hitler did to the Jews. Really awful stuff. But at the same time, obviously not saying that's okay, we also need to understand that really was a different time. It doesn't excuse their behavior whatsoever, but you really should keep that in mind as you look at it.
Absolutely. So now we're going to move on to Young Hickory, and that is our 11th president, James K. Polk.
Absolutely.
So the interesting thing with Polk is he set 4 distinct goals when he came into office. And he was, quite frankly, the first president that came in and said, look, I'm only going to do 4 years. I have a set guideline of what I want to do. That was reduction of tariffs, reestablishment of the Treasury system, acquiring some or all of Oregon country in California, New Mexico, and quite frankly,
He got it done.
And he got everything. When you talk about promises made, those promises were kept.
Absolutely. Like you said, he gained us Texas, Iowa, Wisconsin as states. The man was fantastic. I believe he also brought us land from the Mexican-American War, if I'm correct.
Yes, absolutely.
That was Polk,
and he made America the undisputed continental power.
Absolutely. He was a great leader. The only thing that we're holding against him here is that at least for me, is that he was pro-slavery.
Right, but a lot of people, presidents at that time were, slavery was a thing. And I'm not saying it's okay. It absolutely wasn't. But that's just how those times went.
Absolutely. And as you can see here, we probably would have gave him an A+, but because of that slavery, we bumped him down a letter grade. That's just, you can't.
Right.
There are no excuses for that.
Absolutely.
So next up, we're going to get to our first F president, James Buchanan.
Right.
James Buchanan.
So, no, not a good president. No way.
And for those of you who don't know when he was president, that was right before the Civil War.
Right, that was 1857 to 1861. He was president right after Franklin Pierce, who was another horrible, horrible, horrible president. Not as bad as James Buchanan. But the thing about, he wasn't as bad as James Buchanan was really, really bad. But the interesting thing about James Buchanan is he openly despised abolitionists. Right, he was said to have an influence on the Dred Scott case, which put slavery to rest and literally called any slave, free or new, free or not, that they weren't citizens of the United States.
And he also passed, like you said, the Fugitive Slave Acts, which I believe said that if an escaped slave mixed to a free state, they can still be hunted down and brought back to the South. He was a very pro-slavery man.
Right.
He definitely didn't. In fact, he fueled the Civil War, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
The only good thing that he did was open trade with Japan.
Right.
Which then again isn't really.
Which is a positive. And you got to think of it too. The Union absolutely fell apart under his watch.
Oh, absolutely.
He absolutely destroyed it.
He did nothing whatsoever.
He further alienated just the United States as a whole, and he divided his own party. They used to call him Doughface. That's what they used to call James Buchanan. That's what they called him.
The guy was a complete loser.
Right.
Really.
But now we get into the more enlightening president.
Exactly.
One of our favorites.
Our second and last S president.
Right. Superior, Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator.
Number 16.
And so, where do I start? Where do we start with Abraham Lincoln?
Where can you start with Abraham Lincoln?
Where can you start? Because there's many places that you can start with him, right? You could start with the Gettysburg Address, which talked about how freedom would come to the states and how he would work toward unity as a whole. Yeah, well, presidents nowadays, Barack Obama and President Biden had calls for unity. Yeah, that's not going so well for
absolutely not.
The president.
Even in some degrees, Trump.
I mean, you got to come out of the basement at some point.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
And
I know people may get upset at that, but you can't just live in a basement.
You can't. And you know what? Going back to Lincoln real quick, the amount of hate we're seeing for Lincoln nowadays, one of the major arguments that I see against him is, why did he wait so long to pass the Emancipation Proclamation? You know what, Joey? I looked into that. And apparently, from Abraham Lincoln's point of view, if he passed the Emancipation Proclamation and freed all the slaves right away, he would have lost the states on the border with the South who were a little iffy on slavery. If he freed all the slaves, they would have went with the South, and we would have lost the war right away.
Right, and you got to think of it, as a thinker, he was the person that helped to revivify the idea that the Declaration of Independence was an inherent part of the Constitution, and that liberty principles were to be extended to all people, not just like certain races, all people. That doesn't make him a racist. Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. That started the process for freeing slaves in America. It was also a precursor for the 13th Amendment, which made indentured servitude illegal in the United States of America. How can you call this man a racist when he literally freed the slaves? I don't understand.
You know what?
You have to look at Andrew
that's a part of
Johnson.
cancel culture.
You have to look at Andrew Johnson. You have to look at James Buchanan. These were racist Democratic presidents. The Democratic Party has been known to be the party of racism of terrorist groups.
And do you know why, Joey, that they don't go after presidents like Johnson and Buchanan? Because they're not well known. The people canceling these big figures just want publicity. That's all they want. And if they go after Buchanan, no one's really going to give two hoot and hollers.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the Homestead Acts. These acts were able it granted people the ability to own land for little to no cost, right? And the fact that he established the first national banking system, which was the first gateway to the financial network of the country, right? Established a national currency, helped the economy flourish through railroads, canals, etc. I mean, he was
a wonderful, and you know what else? I think he may have been the last president to do this. I may be wrong, but he went into battle, I believe, and he commanded troops firsthand on the battlefields.
Absolutely,
which you don't see today, obviously. But I think the man had gall. He wanted to run the country the way that he thought would, be best, and he got out there and made sure that he got it done.
It's sad, and I think people's cowardly visions of him are coming out. In no way can you just go and say that he was a racist white supremacist. Absolutely not. I mean, you got to look at our next president we're about to get into, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson, our 17th president, they called him the Tennessee tailor. He should have probably stayed in a tailor shop. That's how bad he was. Now, wait, right? So listen to this quote by Andrew Johnson. He said, and I quote, I have the quote right here.
Oh, boy.
This is a country for white men. And by God, as long as I am president, it shall be a government for white men, end quote. That tells a lot about his character.
I can't wait for people to quote that and use that against you.
Well, they better
Crop
not,
down the video.
That tells a lot about his character, Richard.
Absolutely. He was, he did nothing to unite America after the Civil War. In fact, if anything, he created more division after the wounds were already made.
He was a rigid dictatorial racist who was unable to compromise a political reality with odds with his own ideas. And the fact, you know what was worse at all? His strong commitment to obstructing political and civil rights for blacks. That's principally responsible for the failure of Reconstruction.
Absolutely. You know what? That is why he was the first president to be impeached.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The man was an awful, awful president. Really was.
Absolutely. But then we get into a more enlightening president.
Absolutely.
I know he's I think he's really underlooked.
He's one of great controversy nowadays.
They call him Uncle Sam.
Do they really?
Uncle Sam, Unconditional Surrender. There's, when I was looking up the nicknames for these people, there was so many nicknames.
They should have called him Controversy Charlie, really.
That's true.
And we are talking about no other than Ulysses S. Grant.
Absolutely.
Ulysses S. Grant, he has an interesting and extensive history, Yes, it is evidence that he was a pretty bad drunk, but you know what? He was a great leader during the Civil War. He brought us to victory. He passed the 15th Amendment, which stated that, voting rights cannot be infringed based on color or race.
Absolutely.
Like I said, he was a hero of the Civil War. In fact, he created national parks. The man really covered everything. Real Renaissance man.
And if you're gonna remember something about Grant, you got to remember the fact that he presided over Reconstruction, right? And even when you're not looking at Reconstruction, you're looking at the fact that he sent the enforcement acts, which were basically criminal codes to protect African Americans for their right to vote, their right to hold office, their right to serve on juries. The 15th Amendment was ratified in his presidency, Civil Rights Act of 1875. He was all for civil rights.
Absolutely.
And the only real negative thing, like people say, he was a bootlegged drunk. But you know what the interesting thing about it is, Richard? It's just the fact that, yes, I understand there was corruption in the Grant administration. And I just think he was a bit naive and maybe he didn't realize it. But other than that, I think Grant's really underlooked. I think he's a really successful president.
I agree with you 100%, Joey. The man, he was wonderful. He had his own personal faults, but he got the job done.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to move on to somebody else who also got the job done. We might want to slow down here. We're going kind of quick.
Yes, trust buster. So trust busting. Okay, so when we talk about Teddy, I love Teddy. But trust busting was just an irresponsible policy driven by populist need to break up big companies for no actual legal reason.
And Teddy Roosevelt, by the way, who we're talking about, he got a B+. That's where we put him.
And if you remember, he got us into the Spanish-American War by false communications that the ships, it was blown up, but it blew up because of mechanical failures. That was privately known at the time, but we could have saved a lot of grief from avoiding that war.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%, Joey. But some of the good things he did, he passed the Food and Drug Act.
That was good. That banned impure products, food, drugs from being produced, sold, shipped, labeled.
He was also an expansionist, which I personally consider a good thing, looking out for America first, expanding our borders as much as we can. He was also a big environmentalist, as we all know. He really expanded the national parks and, got people going out and enjoying nature.
With his Square Deal program. That was with his Square Deal program. And I liked his big stick approach to foreign policy. This was, we would negotiate peacefully, but we would not hesitate to use force.
Absolutely.
And that reminds me of Donald John Trump, our 45th president. He was a great foreign policy leader.
Absolutely. He wasn't afraid to make business deals
or deals with
other countries.
We will get into him.
He will come on later on. But yeah, like you said, he made deals. He wasn't afraid to make deals, but at the same time, he wasn't afraid to go to war.
Are we getting any action on that Facebook right now?
We got a few people watching. We have Linda watching. Hello, Linda. How are you doing tonight? Other than that, doesn't tell me who's watching. Andrew was watching earlier. Andrew, how are you? And Kayla was also watching. Hello, Kayla, to you.
So now we're going to get into Silent Cal. So that's Calvin Coolidge.
Absolutely. Calvin Coolidge
is one of the more underrated presidents as well. Look at the different things he did, right? It's just, it's insane that people have to, think of Calvin Coolidge as...
Oh, sorry, Joey, to cut you off. We have Alyssa watching, your sister.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to give her a shout out on camera?
Alyssa, how are you doing? Wait, I messed up. We skipped Woodrow Wilson.
We skipped
Woodrow Wilson.
We're all over the place.
We cannot do that. We need to go. We need to go to Woodrow Wilson immediately right
Absolutely.
now. Okay.
Woodrow Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. As many of you know, he was the president during the Great War, World War I, during 1914.
Well, he basically got us into that World War and used it as
Absolutely.
a pretext to go after political opponents with the Sedation Acts.
And you know what I don't understand about Wilson, Joey, is that so many different big corporations and organizations say Wilson is one of the best presidents
Yeah,
we
because
have.
a vocal defender of the KKK definitely sounds like he can be a fantastic
right.
president.
That man was an avid.
Let's give him a clap. A great man.
He was part of the KKK himself. He was an avid racist. He brought us into a war, World War I, which we should have never been part of in the first place.
Absolutely.
He
destroyed the economy too.
I hate this man.
You saw
I hate
prices
this man.
drive up. And we went into recession for 3 years. I mean, he bribed the provisional government with $350 million. I mean, to remain in the Cold War. He paved the way for the Cold War. I don't know what else there is to say.
And
why aren't we looking at, you talk about a racist president, not Donald Trump, Woodrow Wilson, my friends.
Absolutely.
Woodrow Wilson, my friends.
You know what? Yes, people can say he did have the 14 points, which were,
Yeah, but
they
even
were all
Germany
right,
and the French rejected those.
Exactly, Joe. And that's the point I'm trying to make. The 14 points may have been okay themselves. He was very weak with foreign policy. He did not push hard enough to get those passed. The man got nothing completed.
And
he was an awful man.
He was in favor of radical expansion of the federal government. I mean, he just felt that the government should be controlling every aspect of your life.
And for everyone out there who enjoys taking a sip of the happy water every now and then, Wilson is also the one who passed prohibition making alcohol illegal.
Right.
He really stepped all over rights.
So I have a couple of quotes from Wilson.
Oh boy, here we go.
You ready for the first one? Please do not cringe. Just try to listen to it out,
boy.
all right? All right, so we've got this one, and I quote, not I quote, and
Right.
as Woodrow
Yes.
Wilson quotes,
Yes.
segregation is not humiliating, but it's a benefit, end quote.
Really?
Wait.
Oh, it gets better.
And Woodrow Wilson quotes that there are no positions for black people in government but in a cornfield. Yeah, that's definitely a president that
Wow.
deserves to be in the top 10 ranking, definitely. Historians, you got it right. I'm proud of you.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to go to the Black Lives Matter organization and ask them where they put Wilson. I'd like to see their list.
Maybe they
of
love
the
him
best
now.
presidents.
I don't know.
With them, you never know.
Maybe Antifa will.
It's really a toss-up.
Yeah. But,
So,
I mean, he was just a horrible, horrible president. And I try to understand to this day why historians rank him so high. And I just don't get it. I really don't.
Do you know what school he came from, Joey? Of course.
Yeah,
right?
they called him the schoolmaster in politics. He came from Princeton. He was actually.
I thought he was a Harvard man.
No, he was Princeton.
Princeton.
He was actually the president of Princeton University.
Really?
Yeah. So he probably. Actually,
boy.
you know what I think it is at the time, and I did doing some reading. I actually found out that, and I think this probably was true at the time. Lots of historians back then were liberal.
Yeah.
So that tended to give him an advantage.
That's why we have our garbage textbooks today, which spew out nothing but hate and just false facts.
Absolutely. So now
moving on to someone a little better.
Calvin Coolidge.
We have Calvin Coolidge.
You want to start?
Absolutely. Right off the bat, he has a B+. Again, a B+. One of the reasons I gave him that mark personally is because he came to Drake while he was president. He came to our town, Drake, Massachusetts.
That's a big deal to Richard, guys. That's a huge deal to Richard.
Our little old town.
Any
Calvin
famous
Coolidge
person that comes to Drake, Richard's going to love you.
Absolutely.
Even if you're a Democrat, Republican, no matter what you are, you're going to love
because I'm sure at the time it gave publicity to the town of Drake. It helped our businesses.
Absolutely.
But Calvin Coolidge, some of the things he did, he really knew, or at least he believed that the president should have limited powers. They called him Silent Cal. Famously, he was at a dinner party one time. A journalist came up to him, and she says to him, it was a woman, which goes up to him and says,
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was strange. A lot of weird things happening tonight with the lights, ladies and gentlemen. So she goes up to him, right, and she says, Mr. President, I bet my friend over there that I can get you to say more than 2 words. And do you know what he said? You lose. You lost. You lose. What a great man.
You know what I liked about him? He drastically reduced the size and scope of the federal government from its Wilsonian excesses. So he made it more fair because Woodrow Wilson basically resegregated the federal government, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you remember Calvin Coolidge, he was very, very supportive of African Americans.
Very big anti-racist.
And Native Americans. He passed many laws to prevent lynchings of African Americans and uplift the lives. He also passed so the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924.
Yeah.
And what that was, it granted over 100,000 Native Americans to increase their rights to their tribal lands. Yes.
You know that he also, unlike Wilson, who supported the KKK, Calvin Coolidge refused to hire anybody into the White House or government that was affiliated with the KKK, and he attempted to pass anti-lynching laws, but unfortunately, racist Congress at the time wouldn't let that happen.
Absolutely. And just so for people that don't know, when did the KKK and these Jim Crow laws and things like that start rising? That did not happen under Ulysses S. Grant. That happened under his predecessor, Rutherford Hayes, who hopefully we'll get into, I hope, at some point tonight.
Not to mention Calvin Coolidge, just last thing about him, he really supported the flustering economy of the 1920s.
Absolutely. Low unemployment rate?
Absolutely. The roaring 20s. He was largely responsible for that.
Now, that was a time in industrial and economic growth. I mean, especially with the Kellogg-Briand Pact, that was an influential piece of foreign policy that would renounce the use of war. It didn't prevent war, but it was influential in the sense that it helped to prevent it.
Absolutely, And now we're going to move on to somebody who Joey and I disagree with a tad
All right,
bit.
so yeah, let's get into Herbert Hoover. All right, I'll let you go first.
Because I love the
why
man, yes.
you do think. I don't think he was horrible.
No, but you know what? I don't think you give him enough credit, Joey. Herbert Hoover came after Calvin Coolidge. He was president. When did he get?
He was 1929 to 1933.
Yeah, around 1928, 29 to 33.
Bert, that's what they called him.
Bert, absolutely. Good old Bert.
Bert.
There is a big misconception that he caused the Great Depression. That is not true. He inherited it about 7 months into his administration, so really, he couldn't do anything about that.
Right.
He did do his best to try to mitigate, the spread of the Great Depression, because obviously at that time when it first happened, nobody really knew how bad it was. He constructed the Hoover Dam, which, by the way, I don't want you to think he was, this big smug guy who named the dam after himself. It was called the Boulder Canyon Dam. FDR named it after him. He knew his restrictions as president. He didn't try to overstep the boundaries of the federal government.
Right.
Like I said, he attempted to alleviate the Great Depression. He tried his best. Towards the end of his presidency, he did start to implement government programs much like FDR. In fact, I believe FDR copied a lot of the later things that Hoover did. But, at the time, he just received a lot of hate. And it's a sad because he really did do his best. He was a real underdog president.
Richard, I understand completely what you're saying. My understanding of this period of history relates otherwise. I feel that, in fact, Hoover and the Federal Reserve's counterproductive to growth economic policies were horrible in their consequence.
Oh, Joey.
But he did have laissez-faire policy, and if that had been maintained and the Federal Reserve had never been formed, then maybe there would have never been a call for an FDR presidency and a call for the New Deal. And you got to think of it. His single greatest policy blunder was the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. That fueled international trade war and made the Depression even worse at the time. Now, I'm not saying that the Depression was his fault. I absolutely don't think it was. But you got to think, he was a mean man. Maybe not a mean man, but a lot of people seem to think he was a mean man. He was unable to handle Congress. He was unable to, he showed little political acumen, even before the Great Crash. If he had focused more on the American people and being a kind gentleman, then he may have won over FDR.
Well, Joey, that some of that may be true, but again, I'd like to reiterate, when the Depression first happened, nobody in their right mind could assume that it was going to turn into, almost a decade-long catastrophe like it was. Everyone thought it was going to be a few months, maybe even a few weeks, and then it was going to pass. So yes, he was late to a call of action, but you know what? He tried his best. Now, somebody who people credit for solving the Depression, even though he really doesn't deserve that whatsoever.
You ready for this one?
Next big one. Ladies and gentlemen, also, before we say who it is, feel free to comment down below in the Facebook your opinions of some of the things we're saying.
In a few minutes, we're going to open the lines. We don't want to open it yet because we still want to get through more presidents.
Yes, maybe after this one. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, Joey.
FDR, okay, great World War II leader, except for the legal imprisonment of over 100,000 Japanese Americans. Now, that was not so good.
Well, what did we get? We gave him a D.
Yes, we gave him a D, and a lot of people think he's superior. No way. No way. Okay, you got to think of it. He passed no significant civil rights legislation.
No, he was in fact, I believe he was a known racist.
Absolutely, and you remember the NIRA that was created under him, right?
Yeah.
They were supposed to prohibit monopolies. It promoted monopolies, and then when he tried to pack the Supreme Court and everything, the Supreme Court found that the NIRA was unconstitutional, stating that he violated a separation of powers. You saw increasing of artificially raised prices, right?
Right.
People didn't have jobs.
And Joey, I'm glad you mentioned some of his alphabet agencies, I'm sorry, there's the word, alphabet agencies being deemed unconstitutional because they were. A lot of the things he did, he was overstepping his boundaries, and Congress was calling him out for that. And when they called him out for that, do you know what he did?
What did he do?
He packed the courts.
Absolutely.
He was the first president to pack the courts, and he did so, putting Democrats in office. Unconstitutionally. And he did so hoping that the Democrats he put in office were going to look the other way and pass his regulations. That's not how that works. They have to follow the Constitution.
Absolutely. I mean, you saw a vast devaluation of the United States dollar, which destroyed people's savings.
That's really not. Just like to say, Linda in the comments says FDR was considered one of the most favored presidents. That is true. Most people do deem him as a great president.
A lot of people do think that. I object to that because I mean, first of all, I don't think you consider someone who was a racist and whose New Deal policies weren't helpful to African Americans. They were only helpful to white men,
Absolutely,
white working men. I'd say Herbert Hoover's policies were more helpful to African Americans than FDR's were.
FDR, he did nothing to stop the lynching laws. In fact, I believe he was anti-lynching laws.
I'm glad that you were able to, talk it up on the radio. I mean, if I was president, that's what I would do still to this day, even without a crisis. I'm glad you were able to talk on the radio. But let's go. Let's be smart. You had a law degree. Let's go. Let's get some good economic policies. But he wasn't able to do that.
And, just like Winston Churchill. A lot of people think, good wartime leader, not so good when it comes to domestic affairs.
Absolutely. So now we're going to get into Harry Truman, who ultimately cleaned up FDR's mess with, introducing fair employment, expanding Social Security. And, remember he dropped the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Right. And he called for congressional aid for Turkey and Greece, which was his Truman Doctrine, which was a vital part of foreign policy.
In Truman, by the way, we gave a nice A-.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to go back real quick, slow it down with Truman, the atomic bombs. I feel like, yes, he was president when he did that. He wasn't in his first term, though, because FDR passed away, like most of us know. But dropping the atomic bombs, that was really, if you want to get into it, the first major thing he did. And a lot of people consider it a bad thing. Personally, I don't. I guess that's a whole we could have a whole debate on that. But when it comes down to it, absolutely. Maybe we will debate this in the future. The dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But at the end of the day, for this conversation, that we're looking at that as a positive thing. It ended World War II, and it saved American lives.
Absolutely. I mean, he had to do what he had to do, and he didn't fear it.
Absolutely.
And you know what I think was the best foreign policy? One of his more favorable foreign policy achievements was the Berlin airlift.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they flew over 200,000 flights in a year to West Berliners, and it provided up almost 9,000 necessities every single day. That just shows his character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He did not have to do that whatsoever, especially where it was in the eastern sector, which wasn't even his responsibility.
Absolutely.
But he chose to help the starving people of Germany, and you know what? I give him a lot of credit.
Absolutely. And he put an end to racial segregation in the armed forces as well.
He did. He was a big civil rights guy. The only thing really that I hold against him is I think he was weak on domestic communism. When it comes to communist expansion, across the globe. Yeah, he, like we said, the Berlin airlift. He was really, he got things done when it came to that, but domestically he really didn't see communism as a threat, which I think was a big mistake on his part.
Absolutely. I guess we will get more into our next president, who is Dwight Eisenhower. We'll get into Dwight Eisenhower. Now, you remember him. He enacted the first significant civil rights legislation since 1875. He had declared separate public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional, sent the troops to Arkansas in order to enforce these laws, and he upheld the African Americans' rights to vote. I remember that he championed the interstate highway system, which I think was huge.
Oh, yeah. And also, real quick, before we get into it, we got one more comment. Linda, yes, we know that you said that he wasn't your favorite president. People consider him one. I'm sorry if they came out misconstrued. Your two favorite presidents, you say, are Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan, which we will get into them later. Also, my phone is on 3%, so pretty soon we will not be able to see the comments anymore, but we are getting ready to open the phone line. So
yes, we want to just go through one more president or two before we do that. So
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Like I said,
a good A president.
And he used nuclear threat to end the Korean War too. So
absolutely. That's I believe he also fired General MacArthur.
Yes.
It was MacArthur who wanted to drop 50 nukes on the border between Korea and China. So that was a good call by Dwight D. Eisenhower.
So we're going to get into JFK and then LBJ. Then we will open the phone lines as we go through the rest of those presidents. So do you want to start us with JFK?
JFK. I know that you're a big JFK guy. You are. JFK, we decided on a B. I'm sure
Yes.
Joey would have gave him an A plus.
I wouldn't have given him an A plus because he wasn't in office long enough to give him an A plus.
What would you?
I give him a B. I mean, you got to
Really?
think of it. The economy was in a recession as soon as he came into office, and he took various measures. I mean, look at if you. I don't like to judge things off GDP. I like to look at poverty rates, unemployment, which were drastically lowered when he came into office, and he was responsible for the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which banned wage disparity based on sex. But the thing about it is quite frankly, Richard, GDP under Eisenhower grew at a 2.2% annual rate.
Yeah.
Under JFK, it grew at 5.5.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
And I like the fact that he worked day in and day out for civil rights for African Americans.
Oh, absolutely.
And everyone, quite frankly, he worked hard.
He was a
towards
big
that.
civil rights guy, you know. Also, hello to Phil Tebow watching. His favorite presidents are Teddy Roosevelt and Abe Lincoln.
Abe
great
Lincoln.
people, great people. But yeah, you know, back to JFK, like you said. One thing that I love about him, because I'm sure everyone who's been watching our show for a while now knows how anti-communist I am.
Yes.
JFK was an avid anti-communist.
Absolutely.
And he did do a lot to,
And he was,
curb
you know what makes
communist
me
expansion.
happy about him? He was pro-life.
Was he really?
He was a pro-life Democrat.
Pro-life Democrat.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
You really don't see that too much today. Then again, a lot has happened to the party since the 1960s.
Absolutely. What was not so good kind of grew us into Vietnam War and the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah.
That was an atrocity.
But JFK, right? Foreign policy. One of his first big issues that he dealt with was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
You know, he did. I think that he handled that, you know, relatively well. Of course, that was connected to the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a complete and utter failure on behalf of JFK. He was all over the place.
Absolutely.
If you really think about it, you know.
And yeah, but I think if he had more time in office, you would have seen more success from him. And I guess that leads us into
8
our
years
next
of
president,
JFK.
who I kind of wish never took office. Actually, I can't say that, LBJ, because when you think of LBJ, who was our 36th president, you know, the lone bright spot in the LBJ administration, and it was a bright spot, was the Civil Rights Act, which is actually, you know, stop. We're going to open the phone lines if we can.
Yes, we're now going to open the phone lines.
We just want to make sure we can get through, you know, Donald Trump, Barack Obama too.
And that's going to be pretty. So if you want to call in, give us your opinion. Feel free to reach us there. If you are not respectful, we are going to hang up. So please, let's try to keep this as a civilized conversation.
So about LBJ, right?
Yes,
You know,
LBJ.
the bright spot was he was exactly right. Civil rights on banning all state practices or on discrimination. That's wrong.
He was a D, by the way,
Right.
D president.
It's wrong when it comes to encroaching private rights of citizens or association as well.
He just, you know, he was really weak with his poverty programs. That's really where I take
Welfare state was garbaggio. But you know what the
Absolutely.
thing is, I don't realize people, you know what people need to do? They need to get off their butts and get into work. That's what they need to do. And that's exactly what the government does nowadays. They don't show people how to be responsible. Let's just give you all the money in the world. Yeah, we'll teach people to get off their ass and get into work.
Joey,
Sorry for my language,
cable
but
access.
it's serious.
Do you know
though.
why? But do you know why the government does that, Joey? Because they want people to rely on the government nowadays.
They don't.
Absolutely.
They give people to fish, but don't teach them how to fish.
Absolutely, and they want it that way, you know? They
Right.
want people to have to rely on the government, because when you're relying on the government, they're the ones pulling the strings. And not to mention, Johnson also put many more soldiers into Vietnam,
Right.
which...
And
Oh,
he
boy.
lied about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which basically, in a way, got us more deeper involved in the Vietnam War, right? He lied about North Vietnam firing unprovoked on the USS Turner Joy and USS Maddox, and that was spoken false by his Defense Secretary McNamara, who actually did live long enough to apologize for that. But he basically got us into that. I mean, that should have been an impeachable offense. Not to mention, he resided. He was trying to give. He delivered. Okay, so he delivered the Great.
Getting flustered here, Joey.
There's a lot to say.
Oh,
he
very much
delivered
is.
the Great Society and the Vietnam War at the same time. That's like trying to give people guns and butter, right? But the thing about it is, he resided over a full decade of double-digit inflation and unemployment.
You know, he was a lot of colorful presidents on this list, especially in the time of the 1960s.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to our next very controversial figure.
Richard
That's why we
Nixon.
gave him a C minus. Yeah, Richard Nixon. We share the same first name. That's all we share. We gave him a C minus, like I said.
Richard doesn't like him just because he shares the first name, by the way. I just want to point that
I
out.
did when I was little,
Yes.
until I figured out, more about him. But anyways, Richard Nixon. So one big thing that you do have to give to Nixon is that he ended the Vietnam War.
Absolutely, and
he brought our soldiers home.
He brought his troops home, and that was a campaign promise too. I think that's the biggest thing is that, and that he, that was a campaign promise. And there was other things that he lied about.
Yeah.
We have a phone call.
Oh, we will in a few seconds, I believe.
Okay. Let's get through.
Let's keep talking about Nixon for a while.
Okay.
So Nixon, Watergate. You know,
Right.
Watergate was a big. Would you like to explain?
So Watergate was
to the people?
basically the situation was that you had the 5 men that broke into the Democratic National Committee and tried to bug the place to be able to get information. So they were part of the Nixon's re-election committee, and that's basically how that worked.
Right. Oh, we have Richard on the line. Hello, Richard.
Richard, you're on the Big O Silvio show. Go for it, Richard.
Hello?
Hello, Richard.
Hey, how you
are
doing?
Is this Richard?
Yes, it is.
This
How
is
are you?
Richard and Joey.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm watching the live stream. I don't see us on there.
Oh, you're not on the. Huh. Yeah, Facebook's. You're watching from Facebook?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. Facebook's being a little strange. You know, the comments are popping up, and it's not telling us who's watching. In fact, our phones are about to die, so we're going to lose Facebook comments in a second. Sorry if we haven't responded to you.
You should be sorry. I'm a fair-paying customer.
So tell me, who's your favorite president?
Who is my president?
Yeah, who's your favorite?
Definitely good old A.H.
Well, thank you for
fan.
calling in. Ron, please. Zach, I believe that was cut.
It's cut out. So
ladies and gentlemen, that was thank you.
mildly inappropriate. That's just you know what it is, Richard. People don't know how to have a conversation. Like you got to grow up at some point in life. Let's be real here. You want to have a conversation? Don't come on saying Hitler's my favorite president. You're an immature, right? Go home, read a few textbooks, and let's grow up.
Let's use this for a second because that is a perfect example of, like we said, A-class a-holes.
And we predicted this.
Before the show, we predicted that this would happen. We're trying to sit here. We're 2 young adults, teenagers, sitting here trying to do a political talk show, trying to educate ourselves on politics and talk about the presidents of the United States, the most, patriotic thing you can do. And we have people calling in, saying these awfully inappropriate things. By the way, everyone who's watching live right now heard you, so I hope you're satisfied with yourself.
Right.
I don't know if you kissed your mother with that mouth, but regardless, let's move on.
So just to wrap up Nixon before we get into the peanut farmer. So Nixon foreign policy, I think, was very successful. Watergate, not so successful. He set up lots of environmental measures too for the country, Clean Air Act and everything like that. So ultimately, C- president. You can't overlook. You have to notice his foreign policy.
Yeah.
I think we have another call, but we're going to wait on the call.
We'll get to that in a few seconds.
We have so many important presidents left, and we want to get to them.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see who it is. So Carter. Okay. So Carter, we gave a nice D.
Right. So the problem with Carter, he would analyze a problem and he would be unable to make a decision. It was paralysis by analysis was how Carter's motto went.
Yeah, Carter, what I personally take issue with Carter the most? Well, besides him being a forgettable president, which history, terms him as the forgettable president, he pardoned all draft dodgers from the Vietnam War.
Right.
Not saying the Vietnam War was good, but these people committed crimes.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They dodged going over and fighting a war that America was in,
Absolutely.
And you're a coward. I'm sorry, but you're a coward if you do that, and you deserve to face whatever the penalty is.
Absolutely. I mean, and you saw 2 great economic crises. You saw high interest rates put the economy into recession. And
you did nothing for hyperinflation.
And you saw the second Middle East oil crisis, which was the consequence of political instability in Iran.
Not to mention he supported, the SAW, the SHAH.
Yes. He putting that hostage situation aside, where Ronald Reagan actually freed those hostages that Reagan failed to do. And Robert
on the phone.
We're gonna
hello,
wait.
Robert. Well, let's just take. Hello, Robert. Robert. Hello.
Robert, you're on the Big O Silvio show. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Am I speaking to Richard and Joey?
You're speaking to both of us. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to make a point about Nixon that you guys aren't bringing up. I don't know if you're aware of that. President Nixon was the first president in 25 years before that opened up relations with China. that I
Really?
don't think you guys are aware of.
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
I actually forgot to mention that point. Yes, Nixon was the first president to visit the People's Republic of China and really, have some good peace with China. You're absolutely right, Richard. That's a good point to brought up. We didn't get that to
Tell us, who is
Yeah,
your
I just
favorite
wanted
president?
to bring that up. I mean, I know the Watergate thing was definitely a downed issue, but, besides doing the Vietnam and getting us out of there and bringing on unbelievable relationships and opening the door with China was you.
Absolutely.
From every president coming after him,
Absolutely.
Hey, we're running out of time, so we want to move on here. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you for your call, Richard. We appreciate it.
Goodbye, guys. Great job.
Thank you. See, now that's how you show respect. Oh, we also have
a-
Rachel. Right now, we'll take.
No. Let's
You
wait
wanna-
because we want to get through a few. We have.
Let us get through this next president,
Yes.
then if you're still on the line, we'll take
Yes.
it. Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
So breaking the back of inflation through his Fed chief Paul Volcker in terms of radically lowering taxes for 2 decades of economic boom. In terms of escalating defense spending and breaking the power of the Soviet Union. You remember, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Absolutely. You know what you failed to mention too? His nickname, the Great Communicator.
The Great Communicator. Yes.
His communication skills were so wonderful. He took the U.S. out of so many,
And I feel like that's just, that's just Nixon in a nutshell, that small statement. That's literally Nixon's presidency in a nutshell. Economic boom, low unemployment rate, 18 million jobs created.
And that was a 92-month economic boom, if I recall
Richard.
correctly.
Yes, absolutely.
He was a lovable guy. Not to mention, this may not have to do with his presidency, but he really was a hilarious.
Yes,
a real
he was-
hilarious dude. He had
was-
wonderful
The
jokes.
jokes and everything like that, yes,
So
absolutely.
let's
get to the call. We only
if
have
we
a
can,
few-
Rachel, are you still there?
Rachel, you're on the Big O Silvio show. Go for it, Rachel.
Oh, she's
she
gone.
didn't wanna wait.
Okay, well,
Okay.
thank you anyways for trying to call in.
You can give us a call back if you'd like. We'd be more than happy to take your call.
After this next president, do we want to close the line? The phone line?
After the next president,
Bill Clinton, we're gonna
because we
close
still
the
got to
line,
get
'cause
to
we
the
wanna get
great
through a few
Donald
people.
Trump and the horrible Barack Obama.
Absolutely. So Bill Clinton next.
Yes.
Bill Clinton, B+.
So
why?
He regulated crime significantly. If you remember, homicide rates were drastically increasing. He set through 3 acts. One I did not agree with. I think it was a violation of the Second Amendment right. It was the assault ban. Weapon ban, and if you really look at it, there was no moral reason behind it, and I felt like it did not help to reduce crime. I think what helped was the fact that he funded for prisons, he funded for prevention programs, and he added over 100,000 more police officers.
And did you know, Joey, that every single year that Bill Clinton was in office, the crime rate dropped? Every single year.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you were able to add that point into my statement, Richard, because when you think about it...
So thank you, Irene, for wishing us good luck and having a great show. Thank you for tuning in. Go ahead, Joey.
He created more jobs than the Reagan administration did, 22 million jobs. He presided over a low unemployment rate all around African Americans, women's, everywhere. I mean, Bill Clinton is underlooked. I get it. He slept with a woman in office. I understand he lied under oath, but you know what? That doesn't undermine the fact that there was large prosperity in America.
Oh yeah, not to... a few, I guess we do have to talk about the bads, under Clinton. And one of the biggest ones, I think, besides, Monica Lewinsky and those type of scandals, is the show, don't tell policy that he had towards the military, basically saying, Joey, and for those of you who aren't aware of that homosexuals can join the military as long as basically they don't talk about it, nobody finds out.
That was...
Which both parties were not happy. Conservatives were not happy with that. Liberals were not happy with that. That was an overall bad policy.
Absolutely. And then we're going to get into George Bush. We only have a couple presidents left. I believe we're going to be able to get through them, thankfully.
Yes.
George W. Bush, for people that remember Bush, I think his first term was okay.
Yeah.
But you know what it started getting into? He started driving us into unnecessary foreign wars, ruining our economy, destroying the peace stability of the United States of America.
Again, George W. was a C, by the way. We gave him a C.
Yes. And I mean, he like I said, he got us in the Iraq War by lying to us, saying that Iran was holding nuclear weapons when they weren't.
Absolutely, Joey. And you know what else we need to hold against him? Gas prices. If you ask anybody who's old enough to be around for that time, gas was like $4 or $5 a gallon. What was going on with that? He's not going to be remembered as a great president. He's definitely a nice average president.
Absolutely. And he isolated numerous former allies too, which I think was an atrocity. And I have the stats right here. The unemployment rate under George Bush, I think we may have another call possibly.
I believe so.
4.3 it was. It went from 4.3 to 7.8% during his presidency. And then we'll take one more call, and then we have two.
All right, Rachel. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
You're on the Big O Silvio show. Go for it.
Hey, this is Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
We're fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing
Fine,
good. Thank you
fine.
for calling in. We appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all.
So tell us, Rachel, who is your favorite president? Okay, can we close that call, please?
Can we?
So we're going to close the phone line.
So
actually.
that's two calls. See that what people have to do. The people have to grow up. We're two young kids who are trying to chase their dreams. Okay, and you know what it is. When you grow up and when I grow up, when we have our own talk shows, people are going to remember that and say, you know what? We made fun of them, but they got to their dream. This is an atrocity.
By the way, and just to let those people know, we're keeping your calls in the show, but I am going to go back and bleep what you said. So
which is smart.
So your voice and names are still going to be there.
That was just an atrocity. You know what, Rachel, you need to grow up. You do. I'm sorry. Am I being mean? Absolutely not.
Not to mention
up.
for teenagers, that's pretty pedophile.
Yeah, you look great on everyone.
Female Andrew Cuomo. Anyways, let's move on. So Barack Obama. That's the next big one that we need to discuss.
Right,
Joey.
So
we gave him a D, by the way.
Right. So he led an effective mission killing bin Laden, which the Bush administration failed to do. That was a campaign promise by them, and he spewed lots of support for the LGBTQ community, which I think was huge as well.
Oh yeah, but the big reason why we bumped him down so low, Obamacare.
Obamacare was an atrocity.
Obamacare was a
health
complete and
premiums,
utter failure.
And the fact that they just impulsively drove that bill just right into effect. The premiums were high as anything. He bombed the Middle East into oblivion.
Oh, yeah.
Expansion of the NSA spying, because screw your Fourth Amendment right, Richard.
And he may have been the one responsible for killing Osama bin Laden, but you know what? He didn't stop after that. No. He just kept bombarding the Middle East and turned it into rubble. What? I don't know. You don't even know where to begin with Obama.
You know what I think the worst thing about the Obama presidency was?
What?
The way he exacerbated racial division by prejudging what were often decent and hardworking young men and women in law enforcement, and the fact that, instead of being grateful for all the white people that funded for his candidacy and voted for him, they often exaggerated the extent of racism in America. And I think the big racism problem we have is partially due to Barack Obama.
Absolutely, Joey. People call Trump the Great Divider. Absolutely not. It
Absolutely
goes to President Obama.
Absolutely. I actually found a poll.
Yeah.
CNN poll that said that 50% of people disapproved of Obama's job performance in office.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
That really speaks volumes about his character.
Absolutely.
Ask any college head, though, and I'm sure that they'll tell you.
Absolutely.
He was one of the best presidents ever. So you know what? I think we're going to have to end with this last president. This is probably going to take most of the time.
We have 5 minutes to do that.
President Donald Trump.
Right.
Most of you out there probably think that we're big Trumpies. We are not. Well,
There's
we
a
support
difference.
Donald Trump, but we're not head over heels in love.
Right.
We gave him a B+.
Absolutely. And, if you can't just say Trump was the worst Republican president. He was not. Over 7 million new jobs created. Income inequality fell for 2 straight years. Unemployment rate for African-American women, people with disabilities, people without a college education, all around the board, record lows. Lifted nearly 7 million people off of poverty, a.k.a. capitalism.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to start? Where do you want me to start with Trump's good policies? You want me to start at the fact that Biden has a border that's unsecure and you're having hundreds and thousands of migrants coming in every day? Like, what do you want me to start?
He's putting even more children in camps nowadays. I'm sorry, we've upgraded from cages to kennels.
Yeah,
which were originally built by Obama, by the way.
What do you want me to say? You miss Trump? Yeah, because we all do. Because Trump was actually a good president.
You know what I think it comes down to? His personality. He did have a bad temper. He did make some bad shots when it came to making so many Twitter posts and calling people names. Yes, that's unprofessional, and that's why he's not an A. We are calling him out for that. But at the end of the day, if you're a Republican, you love him because he did hold great Republican values. He started to create a stable border in America and a safe border.
And you talk about foreign policy. He brokered multiple peace treaties with Middle East countries, Arab Muslim nations, Israel, Kosovo.
Met with dictator Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, first president to be able to do that. And I remember they wanted to bomb us when when Obama was president. I mean, and he defeated ISIS. That was a major national security top priority for them when they came into office.
Absolutely.
I mean, he offered association health plans, which would allow employers to pool together with, more affordable quality health coverage to employees at up to a 30% lower cost.
He was, he did.
I mean,
he really did do
I
a
don't
lot
know
of great
where,
things for America.
I don't know what more I'm supposed to say to people that think he was a horrible president. What, are you just going to undermine all the effective things he did? I mean, come on. Wait. Listen to this. People that love the environment, okay? Listen to this. I've got something for you.
Tree huggers, come on, this is for you.
Between 2017 and 2019, wait,
we go.
don't fall off your seat.
Oh boy, holding on to the desk.
The air became 7% cleaner. That's what
What?
they found. It indicated by a steep drop in the combined emissions of criteria pollutions.
You mean Trump didn't hate the environment?
And a lot of
What?
people say he's transphobic, homophobic. I mean, the guy
that's
set out
ridiculous.
a campaign for ending the criminalization of homosexuality. He made a promise to, stop more HIV and AIDS to end that crisis going on.
And,
he
people-
appointed 5 openly gay cabinet members to his cabinet, too.
And people say he's racist. Show me one piece of racist legislation he attempted to get passed. Show me it.
Absolutely.
Where is it? There's no evidence whatsoever. There's he-say stuff from apparently from things that happened back in the day, but you cannot show me one modern example of Donald Trump being racist.
Right. And the
That's
fact
just
that
how
he
it is.
signed into that bipartisan, it was the first step back into law. That was the first landmark criminal justice reform too, which was bipartisan, viewed highly between both sides of the party too, which I think was huge. So that's why we gave Donald Trump a B+. Richard, this has been an interesting episode.
It's been a wonderful show. I
We've
think
got some interesting calls. I just still can't believe people have to be cowards and they can't grow up. You know what? Grow the heck up. It's simple.
these are the people creating, division in our country.
People that do that are the ones that creating divisions. Like I mean, this is a show. I mean, we have priorities as a show.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're trying to promote maturity. That's what we do here.
That's exactly
And
what
people
we do.
come on and just have to disrespect us. No.
I consider myself a modest person, but it takes a lot to put in a tie and a suit and come sit up here and
we take
discuss
a lot,
your unpopular views to a camera.
And we take a lot out of our time to be able to do stuff like this because this
Absolutely.
is important to us, and we're
you know what?
trying to chase our dream.
No matter what people like that obviously don't want us doing this. No matter what they do, no matter what they say, we will always have this show and we will always be doing it.
And we will always have each other's back.
Absolutely, and we are more than happy to bring people with opposite views on our show. But if you're going to do that, that's not going to happen.
Absolutely. With that being said, thank you for everyone that's tuned in live. We apologize for the people that were
interruptions,
disrespectful
yes.
to us. We hope we brought you great content. Until next time, I'm Joseph Bigos.
And I'm Richard Silvio. Have a wonderful evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.